10 days before opening day, the Cleveland Guardians are carrying more weight than any defending division champion in recent baseball history. Not the weight of expectations, not the weight of a payroll that ranked 29th out of 30 teams, not the weight of a 28th ranked offense trying to support a pitching staff that has carried this franchise for 3 consecutive division titles. The weight they are carrying is the kind that does not show up in the standings or the box score or the spring training stat sheet. It is the weight of a federal indictment, of a pitch rigging scandal that the United States Attorney for the Eastern District of New York called the most severe baseball integrity crisis since Pete Rose agreed to a lifetime ban in 1989. Of 2 pitchers who walked into a Brooklyn federal courthouse in February 2026 and entered not guilty pleas to charges of wire fraud conspiracy, money laundering, and conspiracy to influence sporting contests, charges that carry up to 20 years in federal prison each. Of a closer who had been one of the 2 or 3 best relief pitchers in baseball for 5 consecutive seasons, who had accumulated 182 career saves with a 1.88 earned run average, who had made 3 All-Star teams and won 2 American League Reliever of the Year awards, who had been the foundation of the Guardians' late-inning security for half a decade. That closer is not in Goodyear, Arizona right now. He is in New York and Ohio, wearing a GPS monitor, not allowed to gamble, not allowed to leave the state, waiting for a trial date that may or may not happen before the season is over. His name is Emmanuel Clase. He allegedly used the word rooster as a code word for a pitch he was agreeing to throw in the dirt. He allegedly received thousands of dollars in bribes to help gamblers in his native Dominican Republic win $460,000 in prop bets. He allegedly started doing this in May of 2023, 3 years ago, while wearing a Cleveland Guardians uniform, while making the team's most important late-inning appearances, while the organization, the fans, and the entire baseball world trusted that every pitch he threw was his absolute best effort to get hitters out. And on March 16, 2026, 10 days before opening day in Seattle, the Cleveland Guardians are trying to build a competitive bullpen without him, trying to keep their young core focused on a season that matters, and trying to present to the baseball world the image of an organization that is intact and ready to compete, while one of their most important players is in federal court. This is the complete story of everything happening with the Cleveland Guardians right now. The spring training roster moves that are shaping the 2026 team, the players who are fighting for jobs, and the prospects who are being sent down. The specific details of the pitch rigging scandal that has shaken the organization to its foundation, and the honest answer to whether this franchise, with José Ramírez carrying his 7-year extension into the most consequential season in recent Cleveland history, can survive everything it is carrying and still compete for a championship. Start with what happened Sunday, March 15, 2026, because yesterday's roster moves tell the clearest possible story of where the Guardians stand 10 days before opening day. The Cleveland Guardians made a series of roster moves on Sunday involving 4 players. Johnathan Rodriguez was optioned to AAA and will start the season at the minor league level. The Guardians reassigned 2 catchers, Kody Huff and Ingle, to minor league camp. Dayan Frias, who recently rejoined the Guardians after spending the last few weeks with Team Colombia in the World Baseball Classic, will continue to get his spring work in with the minor league group. After all these moves, Cleveland's spring training roster is now down to 44 players. Yahoo Sports. 44 players, 10 days out. The opening day roster requires 26. That means 18 more players need to be removed from the big league camp roster by March 26th. And the specific names who came off the roster on Sunday, Johnathan Rodriguez, Kody Huff, Ingle, Dayan Frias, tell you something important about how the Guardians are prioritizing the remaining spots and which decisions are still unresolved.
Johnathan Rodriguez's optioning is the one that carries the most significance from a roster construction standpoint. He is the organization's best right-handed hitting outfield option at the major league level. Rodriguez came into spring training with a big opportunity to make an impact and possibly make his way onto the opening day roster. Cleveland only has 4 right-handed hitters on its 40-man, including Rodriguez, and they still need more balance in the lineup. Rodriguez did not have a bad spring training. He logged 6 hits in 22 at-bats for a batting average of .273. However, none of those were extra base hits, which is really what the Guardians need out of a player with his skill set if he's going to occupy a spot on the major league roster. Yahoo Sports says 6 hits in 22 at-bats, .273, for a team that ranked 28th in weighted runs created last season and that desperately needs right-handed power to balance a lineup loaded with left-handed contact hitters. Rodriguez's absence of extra base hits in spring is not a minor detail. It is the specific data point that made the optioning necessary. The Guardians need him to hit for power. He showed he could hit for average. And in spring training, when the decision is roster spot versus minor league development, the absence of the specific production you need is the deciding factor. Rodriguez goes to AAA Columbus. He will almost certainly be one of the first call-ups when the roster needs a right-handed bat in April or May. The catcher situation is more routine. With Bo Naylor competing in the World Baseball Classic, the Guardians needed more depth behind the plate during camp. But Bo is back in Goodyear, so reassigning Huff and Ingle to keep them working makes the most sense. Even though Cooper Ingle's time at big league camp is over, he impressed quite a few people during his stint, including manager Stephen Vogt. Yahoo Sports said Vogt could see Ingle's growth behind the plate this spring and called him a kid who works extremely hard. That is the language of a manager who likes a prospect, who sees the development, but who also has a clear major league starter at the position and no roster spot to offer. Ingle goes back to work in the minors, knowing he made an impression. Naylor returns from the World Baseball Classic and resumes his role as the team's starting catcher, following a September 2025 performance that gave the Guardians significant optimism about his development at the plate. Now the harder roster decisions that are still coming, because Sunday's moves were the easy ones. The decisions that remain, the ones that will define exactly what the 2026 Guardians look like on opening day, involve players whose situations are genuinely complicated by performance, options, and the specific needs of a team that has to maximize every roster spot to compete on a 29th ranked payroll. Cleveland Guardians outfielder Nolan Jones has struggled mightily in spring training, hitting just .043 with 13 strikeouts after his impressive debut outing, raising serious roster concerns as the regular season approaches. Bleacher Report says .043, one hit, or close to it, across however many at-bats Jones has taken after that impressive debut. 13 strikeouts. For a player who the Guardians signed to a 1-year, $2 million deal in November to avoid arbitration, who is out of minor league options and who therefore cannot be optioned to Columbus without being exposed to waivers and potentially claimed by another team. The Jones situation is the most immediate roster crisis the Guardians are managing right now. They cannot send him down without risking losing him entirely. But keeping a player hitting .43 on the opening day roster is also difficult to justify when the team needs every spot to count. The Guardians have a couple of tough decisions to make over the coming weeks. As the 2026 MLB regular season slowly approaches, the Major League roster will have to continue being cut down to meet the required mark of 26 for opening day. Heavy Sports says Jones is the most visible of those tough decisions, but he is not the only one. The outfield picture has Kwan potentially moving to center field. Steven Kwan has been consistently starting there this spring, so it could be trending that way. That could leave Chase DeLauter and George Valera to handle the corners, and the switch-hitting Angel Martinez could add a right-handed dimension to the mix. The big lead says Kwan in center, DeLauter in the corners, Martinez as the switch-hitting versatile piece, and Rhys Hoskins, the 32-year-old first baseman signed in the offseason as a right-handed complement to Kyle Manzardo, adding another option in the designated hitter rotation. The outfield picture is taking shape, but it is taking shape in a way that leaves Jones increasingly without a clear role, which is exactly the kind of roster construction problem that the Guardians' front office is working through in real time.
Travis Bazzana is the prospect question that overshadows every other organizational conversation except the legal one. Travis Bazzana, ranked as MLB Pipeline's 20th overall prospect, and Juan Brito, Cleveland's 17th prospect, are on the cusp of reaching the majors, and both play second base. The big leads Bazzana's World Baseball Classic performance, going 2 for 4 with a home run, adding great defensive plays for Team Australia before Australia was eliminated by Korea 7-2, gave the Guardians what they needed to see from a development standpoint. He is close. Maybe not opening day close, but close enough that every spring training at-bat he takes matters in ways that normal prospect call-up timelines do not fully capture. Brayan Rocchio is expected to open the season at second base, with the middle infield mix subject to evolution as Bazzana and Brito develop. The big leads Rocchio opens at second, but the evolution is coming. The question is not whether Bazzana arrives in Cleveland in 2026. The question is whether it happens in April, May, or June. Parker Messick is the pitching story that nobody is fully talking about yet because the Clase and Ortiz scandal dominates every conversation about the Guardians' pitching staff. Parker Messick might end up becoming a staple in the Cleveland Guardians' pitching rotation. Yardbarker, Messick is a 25-year-old left-hander who was drafted by Cleveland in the second round of the 2022 draft out of Florida State. He posted a 3.41 ERA at AAA Columbus last season with 149 strikeouts in 157 innings. The stuff is real. The question, the one that every young starting pitcher faces when he transitions from AAA to a major league rotation, is whether the deception and command that work against minor league hitters translate to an environment where every batter can punish a mistake and where the margin for error is permanently smaller than anything he has faced. The Guardians need him to be a legitimate rotation option because the Clase and Ortiz situation has created a specific urgency around building pitching depth that goes beyond the normal organizational priority they place on developing arms. And that brings us to the scandal, the story that is present at every spring training conversation about this team, that fills the space every time a reporter asks Stephen Volt about his roster, and he pivots to talking about the players who are here and ready to compete, that sat in the Brooklyn Federal Courthouse on February 18, 2026, when two men in suits who had once been among the best pitchers in baseball walked in and spoke through a translator. Emmanuel Clase and Luis Ortiz were indicted in November 2025 for accepting several $1,000s in payoffs to help two gamblers from their native Dominican Republic win at least $460,000 by placing more than 100 in-game prop bets and parlays on the speed and the outcome of certain pitches. The charges, as laid out in the indictment, are specific and documented. Clase, according to prosecutors, started the scheme in May 2023. He allegedly agreed with bettors to throw specific pitch types at specific speeds, predominantly first-pitch balls thrown in the dirt outside the strike zone, so that gamblers who knew in advance what was coming could place prop bets on the outcome and collect. The rewritten indictment added allegations that Clase used code words like rooster and chicken in communications about pitches to be thrown. Prior to a May 18, 2025 game against the Cincinnati Reds, Clase received a message to throw a rock at the first rooster in today's fight and responded with, "Yes, of course, that's an easy toss to that rooster." Rant Sports, rooster, chicken, easy toss. Those are the words, the specific, documented, quoted words from the superseding indictment that the United States Attorney for the Eastern District is going to put in front of a jury and ask 12 people to interpret. The defense team will argue that Clase is innocent, that his devotion to baseball is total, that he has spent his career doing everything in his power to help his team win. They will argue that the payments were for lawful activities. They will argue that the government's case is weak and circumstantial, and a jury in Brooklyn, in a trial that may happen in May or may be postponed to October, will decide whether the words in those text messages mean what the prosecution says they mean. Clase, a three-time All-Star, had a $4.5 million salary in 2025, the fourth season of a $20 million five-year contract. Prosecutors say he started providing bettors with information about his pitches in 2023, but did not seek payoffs until 2024. ESPN, the financial context matters. Clase was not a struggling player desperate for money. He had a $20 million contract. He was one of the highest-paid relief pitchers in the American League. The specific motivation the prosecution will have to establish, why a man making $4 million a year would risk everything for a share of kickbacks from $400,000 in gambling winnings, is one of the central questions the defense will exploit. But the prosecution's answer, implied by the indictment itself, is straightforward. Money begets money. The scheme was not primarily about the kickbacks Clase received. It was about the relationship, the network of gamblers from his home country, the specific social and community obligations that come from being the most famous baseball player from the Dominican Republic in Cleveland, Ohio, and the specific human weakness that has ended the careers of athletes with far less financial security than Clase, for as long as professional sports have existed. The allegations against Clase and Ortiz are the most severe for the sport since Pete Rose agreed to a lifetime ban for betting on baseball in 1989. Rant Sports, that comparison from the Associated Press reporting on the case is not hyperbole. It is historically precise. Pete Rose bet on baseball. Clase and Ortiz are accused of rigging pitches for money, of actively compromising the performance they were being paid by the Cleveland Guardians to give in every appearance. If the prosecution's case is correct, every first-pitch ball Clase threw in the dirt during the time period covered by the indictment was not a tactical decision, it was a financial transaction. Every pitch was potentially purchased. Every appearance was potentially compromised. The 4 consecutive division titles the Guardians won while Clase was their closer were won with a bullpen that, if the indictment is accurate, was not always pitching on the level. The Guardians have cooperated fully with both the investigation and Major League Baseball's parallel inquiry. Manager Stephen Volt has handled every question about Clase and Ortiz with the professional composure that his tenure in Cleveland has consistently demonstrated, focusing on the players who are in Goodyear, on the roster that is being built, on the season that begins in Seattle in 10 days. He has not pretended the situation does not exist. He has not minimized it. He has acknowledged it and moved past it with the specific discipline of a man who understands that the only thing a manager can control is what happens on the field. The legal system handles what happened in Brooklyn. He handles what happens in Goodyear. The bullpen without Clase is a genuine concern. Cleveland's bullpen includes Cade Smith, Sean Armstrong, Eric Sabrowski, Matt Festa, Tim Herron, Colin Holderman, Connor Brogdon, and Peyton Pallette. The Guardians need to see how Hunter Gaddis progresses through his throwing program before making any determination about his opening day status. The big lead, Cade Smith, is the most likely option to serve as the primary late-inning reliever in Clase's absence. He posted a 2.51 ERA last season and has the pure stuff, a mid-90s fastball with sharp slider, to handle high-leverage situations. But there is a difference between a reliever who is good at high-leverage situations and a reliever who has been tested in them consistently across 5 seasons as a 3-time All-Star closer. That difference, the gap between competent and elite at the back of the bullpen, is where the Guardians' 2026 season will be most vulnerable.
And yet, 10 days from opening day, José Ramírez is in Goodyear, hitting 3-run home runs 386 feet in the Arizona sun. Cleveland Guardians seem to be following a familiar formula heading into the 2026 season. Steven Kwan getting reps in center field, Travis Bazzana on the cusp of arrival, the pitching pipeline producing Parker Messick as a potential rotation staple. Yardbarker's 7 division titles in 10 seasons, 29th ranked payroll, a closer under federal indictment, a roster full of 22-year-olds who have never played a full major league season, and a general manager named Mike Chernoff who said plainly and without apology that he has to do it through scouting and development because he cannot do it any other way. The formula has worked every time. The obstacles have been different every year. This year, they are heavier than any previous year. And in 10 days, when the Guardians take the field at T-Mobile Park in Seattle to play the first game of the 2026 regular season, we will find out whether the formula holds under the specific weight that it has never been asked to carry before. A federal indictment, a missing closer, a 29th ranked payroll, and a third baseman from Boni, Dominican Republic who signed a 7-year extension because he wanted to be in Cleveland. That is the Cleveland Guardians on March 16, 2026. Everything is on the table. Opening day is 10 days away. All reporting in this broadcast is sourced from Yahoo Sports, SportsIllustrated.com, MLB.com's official opening day roster projection, Yardbarker's Cleveland Guardians news page, ABC News, Good Morning America, ESPN, CBS Sports, AP Wire reports from the Intelligencer and Daily Gazette, Fox 8 Cleveland, KQSM-FM, WXSM-AM, Click Orlando, Cleveland Sports Today, and official United States Attorney Eastern District of New York press releases and court filings from the Emmanuel Clase and Luis Ortiz matter. All allegations are unproven charges. Both Clase and Ortiz have pleaded not guilty, and their attorneys maintain their innocence. All information reflects confirmed reporting as of March 16, 2026.